Is it okay to proceed, Josh?
Yeah, through your worship, we do have a quorum, and we'll just be waiting for the balance of the members to rejoin.
Okay, well, we'll proceed with the meeting then. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. For roll call, we have regrets from Councillor Ham. She's unavailable this evening. We'll take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of May 25th, 2020 as presented.
Okay, someone to move that? Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. There are no delegations or public meetings this evening. Adoption of council and committee minutes. Minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular council virtual session held on May 4th, 2020.
Okay, someone to move that?
I'll move it.
Councillor Barber and seconded by Councillor Oslech. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Elmer Police Services Board meeting held March 10th, 2020.
Okay, someone to move it? Deputy Mayor Andrews and seconded by Councillor Chapman. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is the consent agenda.
That items A to E of the May 25th, 2020 consent agenda, save and accept items blank, be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move this? Councillor Barber, seconded by Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Chapman?
Yes, number item B.
Okay.
Bill 156. Even though we don't have agriculture within the town, I think that support of this is really important. People are trespassing on farmland and destroying crops and going into barns and taking animals and releasing them. And that's not in the better health of the animal. They've just kind of stepped over their bounds, and I really think that we should give the municipalities our support and support Bill 158.
Okay, and that's a good point, Councillor Chapman. About a year ago, I went to a roundtable agricultural meeting, and they discussed it at length at that meeting, and there's been a lot of that going on, and it's getting to the point it was very serious. And we did discuss it again at our last agricultural roundtable meeting. So are there any other comments about this? Okay. Are there any other items we want to pull? And then we'll kind of work together on putting this thing together. Councillor Oslech.
Yes, item C, the museum archives. I think it's a good read because it has a lot about the 1918 Spanish flu in there. It's a really good read, and I would like to. Everybody should read that because it really brings everything home to rest.
Okay. Any other further questions or comments about the consent agenda? So we'll proceed then, Councillor Chapman. Could the clerk read the resolution one more time, including that resolution of what Councillor Chapman would like added?
Yeah, through your worship. This is moved by Councillor Barber, seconded by Deputy Mayor Andrews, that items A to E of the May 25th, 2020 consent agenda, save and accept item B, be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, and any further questions or comments about that resolution? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is the LED streetlight conversion. So it's report CAO 3720.
All right. That report CAO 3720, entitled LED Streetlight Conversion Project Update, be received for information.
Okay, someone to move this?
I'll move it.
Councillor Oslach, and seconded by Councillor Barber. Are there any questions or comments about this? I would like to thank the CAO for putting this report together. That it's a good report, and it gives us the answers I think that we're all looking for. Do you have any comments about this, Jenny? Any further comments?
Through you, Your Worship, I think just overall the flavor of the report is that we've been very successful in meeting the targets that of the model that Earth presented when we did our conversion. And although the hydro rates have exceeded what was anticipated, we are still covering the costs of the loans, plus a little bit of savings on an annual basis as well for the operating budget.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I think I've seen someone's hand up. Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. When this came about, I think it was about six years ago, the Director of Operations at the time provided me with a lot of information, and I did a report to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada on our LEDs, and basically we're talking about not a light going to the sky, but transmitting down to the ground, and it's fantastic for astronomers. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, comments about this report? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 4020, and that's a service delivery review participation. So go ahead, Josh, please.
That report CAO 4020, entitled Service Delivery Review Participation, be received for information, and that Council refers the correspondence received from the Township of Malahide to staff for a future report to Council.
Okay, someone to move this resolution? Councillor Charlton, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or comments about this report?
Your Worship, I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Councillor Barber.
The context of the report obviously suggests the additional workloads from COVID-19. Will we be moving ahead as best we can to see if there are some common elements?
Maybe I could refer this over to our CAO to give further comment about that. Would you mind answering that, Jenny, please?
Yeah, certainly. Through you, Your Worship. Staff will try to provide a report back to Council in relation to the number of variables to consider in taking part in the service delivery review. We certainly will try to get that to Council as quickly as possible. If Council approves that we proceed down that road, then of course we will do our utmost to assist in the timelines. But having said that, it will be very difficult for us to move things forward with great expedience, if you will, under the certain conditions that we're under. So we will do our best, but it will be a struggle to add those types of discussions and interview processes on top of the day-to-day that we're undergoing at the time. In having some discussions, with the consultant and with the CAO at the township already, I have asked kind of what methodology they would use, and asked whether, input from Elmer staff and Elmer council would also be sought. And certainly that's their plan. So that adds an element of to slow things down as well, because it'll be the staff availability as well as council availability. Having said that, we are heading into our slower season for council meetings, if you will, as well. So that may help us meet some of the timelines they have. I really don't know exactly the timelines, with the exception that under the grant program, they are obligated, they are obligated to have a report completed by September, unless they request for an extension with the province. And I'm not sure what the outcome of that may be.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Are there any further questions or comments about this report? Go ahead, Councillor Chapman.
I'm just glad to see that even though we didn't get the grant for the review, they did, so that we're working together. And even though it's their review, I'm sure that there'll be some benefits to us. And I think it's good that we're going to work together with this.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? The only thing I was going to add is that I know through this service delivery review that I believe Malahide have used that to help them work through the police costing. And I would really love for that to get done first, so that we got that done and we know what we're doing with that. I hate to see us get in too deep, without getting some things crossed off the list. So most certainly I think we should be working with Malahide and seeing what efficiencies, we can find. But it would be great if we could get that one done and we figure out where we're all going to go with that. And I think once we know that, that's going to help us clear the path to more, more things that we can do. I do know, and I'm sure you've all read it in the report, there are 2 or 3 things that are of main interest. One is the planning. Another one is fire services, and I believe even possibly recreational services. So, those are some things I know that they are asking about. We may be interested, we may not, but I'm sure there are lots of other things too that we could look at. So as long as, and everyone's fine with the resolution the way it stands then? Okay, so, sorry, Jenny, did you have something further?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Mayor French, do you want to change the resolution to add the caveat that the police costing be completed primarily first before we proceed down the road of other items, or how are you?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it would be great, because if we could get that done, and regardless of which way it goes, I mean, that's fine. But if we could get that accomplished, then we can move on with other things. But it seems to me that if we get too many things on our plate, nothing's going to get completed. So I think if we could get that done first and then move down the road of looking at other things that we can work together. I don't know what other councillors think of that. Councillor Barber?
Your Worship, if we can word that in such a way that that the police service proposition be dealt with exponentially.
Okay. So you'd like to get that one out of the way as quickly as possible?
Affirmative, Your Worship. If there's more negotiation that has to be done or clarification, that should be easy to manage.
Okay. All right. Jenny, can you think of a way we could word it so that it adds what Councillor Barber's asking for?
Yeah. Josh, do you have some wording prepared on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Would you like me to read the resolution from the top?
Yes, please, Josh.
So that report CAO 4020 entitled Service Delivery Review Participation be received for information, and that council request the current police costing process be resolved prior to the town staff or council actively participating in the service delivery review, and that council refers the correspondence received from the Township of Malahide to staff for a future report to council.
That sounds good. What does everyone else think? Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Barber?
My concern is that the way the resolution is worded is specific, that says that the police services must be done first before anything is considered. And I don't know whether that's the flavor that council and staff were looking for. I obviously, it's a priority, and it should be considered timely, because it has been on the table for probably a couple of years now. But I don't know whether we should make that as a caveat that it must be done. Certainly the principle to make it happen. I need some help on wording on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Josh, do you have any suggestions of how we could reword that a bit, just so that Councillor Barber is satisfied with the wording?
Through your worship, would it work for members of council to indicate that the police costing process take priority when it comes to staff and council resources throughout both processes?
Councillor Barber?
That sounds good. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. What about the rest of council? Do you feel comfortable with that wording? Okay. Are we ready to vote on this then? So all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is report CAO 4420.
That report CAO 4420, entitled Elgin County Communications Integrity Commissioner and Closed Meeting Investigator, be received for information, and that staff be directed to respond in writing to the County of Elgin, indicating the town currently has satisfactory contracts for these services and will not be making changes to these appointments at this time.
Okay, someone to move the resolution? Councillor Chapman, and seconded by Councillor Barber. Any questions, comments about this report? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Finance 1220, Development Charges Report.
That report, Finance 1220, entitled 2019 Development Charges Report, be received for information.
Okay, someone to move the resolution. Councillor Oslach, and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or concerns about this report? Kale, did you have anything to add to the report? Any updates or anything?
No, Your Worship, not at this time. Development charges is this is an informational report for you to understand where the balance comes from each year, and we're sitting at just over $1 million in the development charge reserve.
Okay, thank you, Kale. All right, all those in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Finance 1320 Building Permit Reserve.
That report, Finance 1320, entitled 2019 Reserve for Building Permit Fees Report, be received for information.
Okay, someone to move this resolution? Councillor Chapman, and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or concerns about this report? And this is basically a housekeeping report, right, Kale? Just giving us all the information from last year, like a wind-up. It's kind of like a wind-up report.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, this report is a requirement under our bylaw to actually, and a requirement under the Building Code Act to report on the cost of carrying out the activities of the building department in the given year. And it does establish that if there was an excess of funds, that they are reserved for the purposes of funding the activities of only the building department. By law, the building department cannot subsidize other taxation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. The next item up is Finance 1420 Corporate Credit Cards.
That report, Finance 1420, entitled Corporate Credit Cards, be received for information, and that council authorize the CAO Deputy Clerk, Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief, Director of Operations, and the Director of Corporate Services to execute the credit card agreements for the Town of Elmer corporate credit cards through BMO.
Okay, someone to move this resolution? Councillor Charlton, and seconded by Councillor Chapman. Questions or comments? Did you want to speak to this, Kale, at all?
Through you, Your Worship, just to give an update, we did identify this as a major concern of trying to operate our business through a pandemic. It's highlighted the limitation of our previous procurement system that we were using, where department heads are using their own credit cards. I think that this is perhaps we're through the worst of this pandemic, we hope, with respect to emergency purchases. However, we can't be sure of what the future holds, and we certainly can't be sure of what a future emergency situation could look like. So I think this is probably a little bit overdue for us to establish these and get them operating. And this doesn't, as I said in the report, it doesn't create additional spending. It just changes the way we are able to direct that spending by using the credit cards for purchases that are approved in the budget.
Right. Well, I think it's time too, because as council knows, our staff have been using their own personal credit cards to do the business for the Town of Aylmer. And I don't think that's appropriate whatsoever. And there are times by the time they submit the information and it crosses all the desks and gets over to where it needs to be signed, sometimes they actually incur interest charges, which they don't get back. So they don't I've never seen anyone claim them. So in reality, this is the best way to do business. And I'm really grateful to staff for looking into this. And I think it is long overdue. So thank you very much for that. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item is CORP 1520 Hacienda Lands Deed Transfer.
That report, Corp 1520, entitled Hacienda Lands Correcting Deed Transfer, be received for information, and that council consider giving 3 readings to the bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the acknowledgement and direction for the transfer of a correcting deed to the Town of Elmer for lands known as 9962 Hacienda Road from the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, and that council authorizes staff to reimburse the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority for legal expenses associated with the transfer of the correcting deed for the Town of Elmer lands at 9962 Hacienda Road.
Okay, someone to move this resolution? Councillor Barber, and seconded by Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is the Clerk 1020 report.
That report, Clerk 1020, entitled Virtual Statutory Public Meetings / Hearings for Planning Applications, be received for information, and that council directs staff to take the necessary actions to allow for electronic virtual public meetings for the purposes of the Planning Act.
Okay, someone to move the resolution? Councillor Chapman, and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments about this report? And Josh, did you have anything further to add to this?
Through your worship, really the objective of this report is seeking council direction to take the necessary actions to allow for these virtual public meetings. With the legislative changes, council's been granted a great deal of they're using their own discretion to determine the best ways to make these meetings accessible in their local circumstances. Staff have taken some various approaches to ensure that these meetings are increasingly accessible. A few of them of note would be adding 7 calendar days to the typical notice period for applications that haven't already been advertised. And what that would allow us to do is to take a little bit of extra time and make sure that any individual that wishes to speak to the application is properly onboarded and comfortable with the technology prior to their participating. Other than that, the process will be largely the same. It'll be very similar to our current process for council meetings.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, did you have a question, Councillor Barber?
Yes, I do. According to, are we in compliance with the Planning Act as far as notification goes and time allocations? Adding the 7 days?
Through your worship,
Josh, did you want to answer? Yeah,
through
go
your
ahead,
worship,
Josh.
and to Councillor Barber, yes, we are fully within the requirements of the Planning Act as amended by Bill 189. As far as council's discretion, our timeframes for essentially turning around planning applications have been extended indefinitely. So if there's ever a file that council doesn't feel comfortable resolving through electronic means, we are well within our rights to sit on it and wait until we can have a public meeting as we're typically used to.
Thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is new business and matters of urgency. Okay. Reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon. So we'll have to suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with first, second, and third reading of bylaw 3020, being a bylaw to provide for financial policy in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and bylaw 3120, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an acknowledgement and direction for the transfer of part of Lot 16, concession Gore North of Talbot Road, part of PIN 35308-0104, known municipally as 9962 Hacienda Road, Elmer. That's a correct indeed.
Okay, someone to move this resolution? Councillor Oslach and seconded by Councillor Barber. Are there any questions or concerns? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item up is the 3 readings.
That council gives 3 readings to bylaw 3020, being a bylaw to provide for financial policy in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and bylaw 3120, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an acknowledgement and direction for the transfer of part of Lot 16, concession Gore North of Talbot Road, part of PIN 35308-0104, known municipally as 9962 Hacienda Road, Elmer. Correct indeed.
Okay, someone to move the resolution? Councillor Chapman and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is inquiries by members. Councillor Charlton.
Yes, through your worship, I wanted to inquire about the possibility of having a farmer's market in Elmer this summer. Farmers are kind of struggling to sell their produce. We have lots of open vacant space, and I think we maybe owe it to the population of Elmer to try to do this, and certainly it would help support the local farmers. We have vacant space in the parking lot at the complex. Could possibly be used for open air farmers market. I know there's COVID-19 going on, but surely it could be made to work, spaced out. Might be worth a try, or to inquire about it. If we had 8 to 10 farmers willing to bring produce either on we'd just pick a day of the week or an afternoon or evening, and see if we could help things out.
Okay, I'm just going to turn this over to our CAO. How would you like for us to approach that? What Councillor Charlton has suggested.
Through you, Your Worship, typically for farmers markets, how it works normally is that there's an individual or a corporation that's responsible for selling vendor spaces. So then, whether it be a farmer or a vendor of some other product would rent a table, if you will, from the vendor. And typically they set up, the most popular day of the week for the area, that kind of thing. And it's based on some marketing statistics and that kind of thing. I might be a little reluctant to encourage for council to take this on for a couple of reasons. The first being that, of course, I don't think we would have the resources under the circumstances to ensure that happened. And then the other one, because we already have the Aylmer not fairgrounds, the flea market, if you will, it would put a little bit of, council could be in a position of competing with an existing vendor already for the provision of a service that we don't typically do. So, I mean, we could have a look at some of it. This, the topic of running a market, a farmer's market has occurred in the past. I think the last time we spoke about it was back in 2012. And staff did provide a report to council, and we did some surveys, that sort of thing, to find out how much interest there was in the public. And it fell short of a huge amount of support with the public at any rate. The other thing I'm not sure of right now is, because we don't typically look after a farmer's market or run them, there are certain conditions right now that are assigned to farmers markets under the COVID-19, and I'm just not sure on the spot exactly what those conditions are that you must operate under. I'm not 100% sure, but I know there are some, just from having some discussions with others in the past.
Okay, Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. First of all, the farmers market in Aylmer, the flea market, as you sort of indicated, it's non-functional this year. It's closed permanently. So we do not have a farmers market in Aylmer. I think we tried it in the Band Shell. I think Mary Jane Lampman tried it in the Band Shell. I think the Elgin Feeds tried it in their parking lot, and both of these were failures. And basically, we don't have a farmer's market this year because it is not going to open up at the flea market. He is renting the building out and leasing it out for storage, basically. That's all I have to say.
Councillor Charlton, did you have something else to offer?
Yes, so through Your Worship. So we have the space. We don't really have to run it. We just need to provide space. People would rent space. They'd carry their own liability insurance. They'd sign a disclaimer. They'd have to maybe provide masks, or people wouldn't be able to shop there unless they wore a mask or gloves or whatever. And they certainly could be spaced out well in the complex parking lot. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I think it would be an opportunity, and it could grow, or not. I just think it would be something to try and put Aylmer on the map.
Okay, Councillor Chapman, I believe you're next.
I agree with Jenny that there's a lot involved in the market, and we don't have the staff to organize it. They don't just show up and plunk their booth. There's a lot of planning that has to go into it, and insurance, and abiding by all of the new rules for COVID and everything. The idea of a market, I like. The town running the market, not so much. We need to have an individual who has the desire, the time, the ambition to organize it and put it together, present it to council as a package. And then I think we should consider it. But as far as the town council, the town staff being the organizer of it, it's beyond what we have the resources for at this time.
Okay, thank you. Jenny, I believe you're next, and then Councillor Oslach.
Okay, sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt council's discussions. The only thing I wanted to add, I think at this stage is, if council wishes, I can pull out the reports that we provided to council a number of years ago. It's probably 8, 9, 10 years ago. And we can provide you with kind of the outcomes of the surveys that we did. We can research some of the trial and errors that have occurred. As I think it was Councillor Oslach noted, I think it was him that noted that we did have a farmer's market running in the Banshell. And it didn't, I think it lasted 1 or 2 seasons. And then there was another one at Elgin Feeds following that, and it didn't carry on. But then Elgin Feeds has since then expanded their commercial space outside. So I think that was, kind of the benefit that came out of that. So if council wishes for us to do and have a look at some of these things, again, I could manage with the resources we currently have, but we certainly could get you some more information. But having said that, this would be very time sensitive because of the harvest season, and we're already into almost into June now. So this project would have to take some priority over some of the others. So I just wanted to identify that.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Councillor Oslach?
Yes, to your worship, to Jenny again. How did Mary Jane Lampman do it at the Banshell? Did she come to council? I forget. I think she came to council with a proposal, and I think she organized the whole venue. I think she was excellent at that because she raised the money for the Banshell, or part of the money actually. And she was really good at that. So I wonder, basically, Jenny, if you could pull up that report, and maybe we can see how she did it, and maybe she's willing to do it again. I don't know.
Oh, I can't find my
Go ahead,
yes.
Jenny.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it was Mary Jane Lampman that took the lead on that project, and this is just from my memory, so it's not that great these days. I'm getting older, but I believe it was Mary Jane that looked after it, and she organized it, looked after securing the vendors, looked after kind of the payments and getting the insurance. I think the only inputs from council was to allow for that to occur in the Banshell, if you will, because there was some sale of items that typically wouldn't be allowed in the park. So council did authorize that. As far as location goes, we would, if this is something council wishes to have a look at, I think the Banshell with the restrictions with COVID-19 would be kind of out of the question. You would need a larger area to ensure that you could achieve social distancing. So perhaps the community complex parking lot may be the ideal spot, but again, don't forget we are in that facility with a partner and would need to work through that process with the township as well, or get approval for us to work through that process with them.
Yes, and I would just like to add, I was on council when the Elgin Feeds came forward and asked to have a farmer's market, and it took some doing to get that up and running. I believe it was maybe 2008, 2009, and it didn't last that long, but it was only there a year or two that I can remember. But also, just for mention, the Horton Street Market in St. Thomas, the Council of St. Thomas turned that down, and it will not be opening this year. Just for note, so that you may not have heard that, but it did go to their council the other night, and it was turned down because they're worried about how close it is. It's tight in that area, and because of COVID-19, I think they felt that it'd be too dangerous because it's such a tight area. Just for your information. But Councillor Charlton, would you like staff to do a bit of a report then and get back to council and we at least take a look at it?
Through your worship, yeah, I think I would. It can't be that hard to do. I certainly don't expect the town staff to be involved at the market at all. It's just a matter of setting it up and make sure the protocols are in order. And I don't know. I think it would be something worthwhile to try again. So.
Okay, well,
Right.
fair enough. And I think Jenny, you've got enough direction, right, Jenny, that you can get us a report together maybe for the next meeting?
Yeah, through you, your worship, I think we probably will have to aim for the 15th, the next meeting. My deadline will be tomorrow and I won't be able to pull that together.
Okay, sorry, I was forgetting that we're having a meeting. I'm behind time. It's because of our mix-up last week because of the holiday, but okay, so is that okay then, Councillor Charlton?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there any other inquiries by members? Councillor Oslach?
Yes, I was told last time about Clarence Street to talk to Rob Johnson about that, the Director of Operations. And
Yes.
if he's, your worship, if he's on, I don't know if he's on or not. Are you there, Rob?
Through your worship, yes, I am.
Can you give us an update on Clarence Street? Because I've had several calls about Clarence Street, and I think the residents are worried about whether it's going to be done this year or next year or whatever. So can you give us an update, please?
Certainly, through your worship, I'm hopeful that as things start to return to a new normal, that staff will be in a position to make a recommendation to council on what we should do with Clarence Street. I want to ensure that besides making sure that the construction prices are in our favor, that we want to be confident that when we start the project, we can finish it. I'd hate to be in a position where because of COVID, we have to backtrack. And as much as the residents want the street done now, I'd hate to have them in a position where we half done and then have to shut it down and they end up living with a situation that they're really not comfortable with. So I'm hopeful that one we can still proceed this year, but we're going to go very carefully. The next contract out the door will be for the signals on Highway 3, and we'll use that one as sort of a gauge to test the market, to find out how things are going, if we're going to experience some setbacks with supplies and contractors and things of those nature. And the good thing with using that construction as a test is that if something does get delayed, it wouldn't be a severe disruption to the landowners. It would just be the town that would have the delay. So I still have it front and center of what we're looking at, but we're still assessing it right now, if that answers the councillor's question.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, thank you, Rob, for that update. Are there any other inquiries by members? Councillor Barber? Councillor Barber, you have to put your mic on, please.
Sorry, my finger moved. Rob touched on my question in the traffic signals at Caverly and Talbot. He said that it was going to go out shortly. Do we have a more definitive time frame on that?
Yes, through to Councillor Barber, I'm hoping in the month of June that the drawings and the tender will be far enough that we can go to market and see what the market brings back.
Thank you.
Okay, any other inquiries by members? Okay, we'll move on to statements and committee reports. Okay, and then report of the mayor. I don't have much to report, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank our staff for all the hard work during the COVID-19. It's an ongoing battle for them, and it is for everyone. And I just want to thank our residents and our business owners, and we're thinking of all of you, and we're going to work. We got to work together as a team. This is a team effort for all of us, including our businesses. We need to support our businesses. And I know our staff have been working with businesses, trying to give them information and help them the best they can. I will have a county meeting tomorrow, and I know that the economic development side of the county, they're working on some initiatives as well to help our local businesses. So we got to keep working together, and I'm just proud of everybody, and I just want to thank everybody for everything that they're doing, because we've got some great volunteers in this community and wonderful people that have been looking after their neighbors and their friends and relatives. So it's been good. I can't say enough good things about Aylmer. Okay, and we'll move on to notice of motion and meeting closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 7:49 p.m. for the purpose of considering personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, labor relations or employee negotiations, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality.
Okay, someone to move the resolution? Councillor Barber, and seconded by Councillor Chapman. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll take about a 5-minute break, please.